Hey, Sassy Sub, I'm Emma here today with Molly, and we're excited to talk to you all about week 4 of college football and even preview some of week 5. Let's get started. All right, Molly, so that first game I want to talk to you about is that Tennessee-Oklahoma game. Tennessee did come out on top 25-15. How'd you feel about this game?
I mean, it was favored. This was the plan. I feel like the whole time everybody kind of knew going into this that Oklahoma has been lacking a little bit, especially on their offensive line. So it's been it was an interesting game to see, and especially with, I mean, can we just talk about McCoy? I mean, he was an absolute beast. He had over 92 receiving yards. I mean, he was just like time and time again ready and on his stuff. Sorry, I didn't want to curse there. But time and time again, he was ready and he was on it, and he came prepared and he slayed the entire game.
Yeah, the Vols really showed up and impressed. They forced 3 first-half turnovers. Oklahoma's held to -4 yards between the second and third quarter. I mean, it was a very, very slow start for them, which is weird because in their first 3 games, they came out to an explosive start and then kind of slowed down later in the game. So I really don't think they ever found their stride overall. I mean, in week 4, they only scored 6 points on 2 field goals in the second half. So they definitely struggled under their starting quarterback, Jackson Arnold, who had the 3 first-half turnovers. So how do you feel about him?
I mean, to be fair, he yes, absolutely, but I do see the fact that he did still have over 190 passing yards. So I still think he was there to win, and he set his mind to it. He was determined to bring home that win for his team. It definitely was a little bit of a sleepy game for him. I think he could have done a little bit better. I think everybody was a little off this week in the SEC in general. Things seemed quiet, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And he was benched for the true freshman, Michael Hawkins Jr., on the last drive of the first half. And Hawkins did spark that offense in the second half, which gave them a bit more of a passing attack over the final 30 minutes. He led them to a late touchdown, which made the game a little bit more competitive, but it was honestly too late. So they have some quarterback questions now. They are new to the SEC. This was their first big game. The energy there was amazing, but they just failed to turn out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting moving forward. I mean, they have some really big games coming up. I think week 5, 6, and 7 are huge weeks actually for the majority of the SEC. A lot of rivalry games coming up. So I think Tennessee needs to be on their best game, and they definitely need to show up and show out. And I think, like you said, they have some really big decisions regarding their quarterbacks right now.
No, absolutely. And, you know, it's kind of cool to think about because Josh Heupel, he played for them. He won them a national championship and he even coached there. And now he was on the Tennessee side playing against his former team that he did all those amazing things for. And it's like, this had to be an emotional game for him. I mean, you don't want to go in there and beat a team that gave you so much and gave like the fulfillment of winning with them and coaching with them. So I feel like it might have been a little weird for him, but you're coaching
Yeah,
Tennessee now, so a win's a win.
it's kind of like running into your ex at a wedding or something. It's just a little awkward. There's a tension on the field. I feel like, and I mean, I personally adored one of the high school coaches when I was in high school, and he left and went and coached for another team. And let me tell you, every game that I saw that man at was extremely uncomfortable. It was so awkward. You could tell there's a lot of tension. I can imagine that, but at the SEC level and at the level that they are at as a team right now. And I don't know. It's just it would be an interesting vibe to get on the field.
Yeah, it was
Sure.
definitely weird. You
Yeah.
never want to run into your ex, but at least
No.
some good memories along the way.
Yeah. So
And
so just curious.
yeah, so good. Now, Iam Aliava did have some good moments, but he honestly wasn't as perfect as we have seen him. We're starting to see what he can really be against these bigger and stronger teams. But I am excited to see what he does moving forward. Tennessee did also face some injuries on the offensive line. They even played with a third string left tackle at one point. But despite this, the Vols managed to protect Iam Aliava and get the win. I will say Herb Street during the game frustrated. He like voiced his frustration about how players would go down with injuries during the game. There was a really cool segment on game day this week that I think the whole crew was there for. But they basically broke down a whole drive of Tennessee and showed how they did not sub, meaning the defense cannot sub, and how quick they were to snap that ball every single time. So Herb Street was like, that guy is not actually injured. I mean, he said, quote, "This is college football. It drives me crazy. You look over after a big play and all of a sudden he looks over and goes down. It's not necessarily against the rules, but it's unethical as hell." So stopping and slowing down this offense could have honestly hurt Tennessee with these injuries. But it was interesting to see that Hershey did call them out there.
There was a lot of controversial calls, in my
Yeah.
opinion, this weekend. There was some uproar about a few games in particular, but I think that is a huge one right now. I think it's unfair, and it's, like he said, unethical to keep slowing down a game for an injury that's not real.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen this time and time again, not only in the SEC and not only college football, but even in the pros. So I'm interested to see if they're going to. I don't know if they could even pass rules about that. I'm not sure the
I mean,
technicality.
you can. I mean, the biggest sport in the world is soccer, which is football. My dad's English, so I have to call it football. But they do that all the time. They're notorious for it, and they don't get in trouble for it. So you're not going to get in trouble for it with American football either. It's just the name of the game. Doesn't feel great, but we move on. Now, Tennessee, they do have a bye week, giving their offense time to heal, but they do have to play Alabama and Georgia and other big teams later this year. So I'm excited to see how they continue to grow and how those games pan out.
I mean, the SEC was all over the place this week with controversy. We had controversial calls, controversial coaches swapping places, controversial players. I mean, everything was controversial, and it always is in the SEC. There's always drama.
There's
Uh,
always
always,
drama.
and you know what? I think more girls should tune in because it's very interesting. They needed like a reality show on it, I swear. But I think my favorite part of the weekend was the fact that, even though Auburn did lose to Arkansas in such a tight game, I mean, Thorne really showed up. He still threw more passing yards than the other quarterback. I think he's a great quarterback, and I am really thrilled to see him play throughout the season.
No, absolutely. I will say Auburn did commit 5 turnovers, which were 4 interceptions, and that did come from their quarterback, Brown, who his performance against New Mexico was amazing. So they thought they'd found their quarterback after benching Thorne. But lo and behold, it wasn't really the quick fix it was supposed to be. And they had to bring Thorne back to even have a chance in this game.
Yeah,
So it was very interesting throughout the day.
it was controversial because they brought back a player that they benched in the first place, and he ended up, oh, I mean, almost bringing the game back. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, but the whole game, the Tigers struggled. They had a 38% success rate on offense, which is so low. And Arkansas's defensive performance was very strong, and they really did hold Auburn, and they've helped force those turnovers, and they helped stop them along the way. But I mean, the quarterbacks helped them as well. So
Yeah, I think at the core, and this is just my opinion, I think the core is that if you have a really good offensive line, you're going to have a really good offense in general. And I think this week the line was lacking. There were several missed calls that I think that we could have definitely prohibited.
there's also a lot of like really hard hits and big injuries. I think they didn't even show one on TV. They said it was too gruesome. And then the next thing we see is him getting carted off the field. The funny thing was, it's not funny at all, but the funny thing was, is that the player who had just hit the receiver on the previous play was the one who got injured on the next play. And Twitter blew up and was like, this is what karma looks like.
Karma, Taylor Swift's entering the football scene, and it's just karma
Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah, karma.
Exactly. She's sprinkling it all around, even in the SEC.
Oh yeah, I'm very interested to see how the next 2 weeks go, especially with all those injuries. There were quite a few injuries this week on the field, and I'm just hoping that everybody feels better, and moving forward, everybody's on their best game. Because, like I said, this week was just a little sleepy on every game.
It definitely was. And with Auburn, they always say it when you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. And they have none right now. So it is really going to be interesting to see who winds up as QB1, if there even will be a QB1, or we'll just keep playing flip flop for whoever plays the best on whatever day. And Auburn has a really hard schedule coming up, which is Oklahoma, Georgia, Missouri, and Kentucky all in a row. And they don't have a QB to face these teams. So I think they have a rough, rough season ahead.
I mean, this might be a little personal, but Emma, I don't know how you feel about this. Do you think these quarterbacks are getting along off the field?
Probably not. I mean, you see the women on The Bachelorette fighting over the same man, and it's very awkward at the house, at the mansion. But these two men are fighting for the QB1 position. It has to be the same exact way.
Yeah, I'm assuming there's a lot of testosterone happening.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, it's a lot
And
of
that
pent up.
never leads to anything good.
It is not leading to anything good. So I would be curious if they would ever, maybe get a reality show about it. I'd love to see the behind the scenes in the locker room of
Absolutely. We need a Hard Knocks, but for college football.
yeah, I mean, because what can you do? These kids are just trying to get playing time, and I mean, obviously they're wanting to advance the next level, so playing time is needed for that. Um,
Absolutely.
I would also be a little aggressive about it if my future depended on it.
100%. Millions and millions of dollars on the line.
I'm just wondering the difference is like I wonder if they're as sneaky as women are with their plots against each other. We're a little
Maybe
vicious,
not
so
as sneaky, but definitely more aggressive.
definitely. No, but that would really be awkward fighting for like the same spot and you're on the same team technically, so you
And
just
you
like
go to
want
the same school and you're in the same classes and you have the same teachers and then you eat at the same lunch table. That wouldn't be fun.
they have like different girl interests. I hope they have different types in women.
Yeah.
Just the cake on or the cherry on top.
No, that'd be even messier.
Yeah.
Well, Molly, the last game I want to talk to you about is that Missouri Vanderbilt game. Mizzou came into the game as a top 10 team, going on to that maybe 12-team playoff, maybe even the SEC championship game. That's a hard maybe. There's a lot of competition there, but they had a very disappointing performance. How'd you feel about it?
I just want to say that arguably, like everybody this week thought that the Tennessee OU game was probably going to be the best SEC game. I think this one was one to watch. I mean, we're talking about a double overtime. We're talking about several controversial pass interference calls. There was a lot going on in this game to break down. And I just want to say it definitely had the most drama. There's so
It
much drama
definitely.
happening in this game. Like you just said, they definitely did not pull out their best cards. And this shouldn't have been this close of a game was the problem. And this is why I think it was probably the most interesting game to watch was because it was never supposed to be this close.
No, I mean, Missouri did not look like a playoff contender, which is what they've made themselves look like up until now. They even appeared to be more like a team struggling to make a bowl game, which is quite shocking. But honestly, Vanderbilt has really surprised me along the way. They did amazing things in week one. Now they're turning out in week four. I mean, maybe they're going to have a great season.
I mean, obviously, we were having some issues on the other side. Like, we missed a few field goals, not one, but a few. Brock Taylor missing his 31-yard field goal. I don't know if maybe he was just under a lot of pressure yesterday. Maybe he wasn't feeling well. Maybe he had some problems at home. I'm not sure, but he definitely did not show up for his team, and that's really disappointing this weekend for their team.
I thought their offense was a little too predictable. They definitely have a strong run game, which they've shown up until this point, but
Mhm.
Vanderbilt was able to look at what they did in the first half and they were able to make adjustments and really contain Missouri, which is never something you want your team to be. You want to be explosive, you want to make those big plays, you want to get those big runs and they just weren't able to do it. Vanderbilt really showed out. I was very impressed by them.
I mean, not to pick on them too much, but this is just a sad stat would be that it is their 28th straight loss to a top 10 ranking team.
Wow.
It's very disappointing, and I'm hoping that they can pull it together for the next one.
Well, I mean, they have such a promising team, is what I should say, and they've really been surprising people along the way. So we're gonna hope they pull out a win sometime this season.
I'm hoping that they do. I mean, like I said before, we're coming up in some difficult weeks for each team in the SEC, and
Yeah.
a lot of really competitive games coming up. And I think that's what's so great about the SEC is that we might have one slow week, but the next six are going to be crazy.
Absolutely. And after this game, I know Missouri won, but they did get pushed back to that 11th spot in the AP poll. So we're gonna see if they can still hang in there, still make that playoff. But who knows at this point? They really kind of looked boring. Now, I love SEC football. I watch as many games as I can, but I did happen to put on the Colorado Baylor game in that last half, and Shador Sanders threw a spectacular 43-yard touchdown pass that forced the game to overtime against Baylor. It was absolutely amazing to watch. So, I mean, there are sometimes amazing games outside of the SEC, but that's a hard sometimes.
Sometimes.
Okay, Molly, so you are a proud lover of Texas Longhorns football. How does it feel now being in the SEC for 4 weeks?
I think we've had a pretty easy start here. I think we have had a busy last 4 weeks. I think it's really been 4 weeks preparing for the next 4 weeks, really, because the next 4 weeks, they are just rivalry after rivalry after rivalry. So it's going to be a fun next few weeks for them. But I am interested to see the future with Texas, especially considering they have two of the best quarterbacks in the SEC right now. With Ewers being injured, that's still not decided if he's coming back, correct? Yeah, I have not seen any
They
news
don't
that,
know when.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like he will be back for the OU game. Because that game is going to be so cool to have in the SEC. But yeah, I don't know if he's going to play Mississippi State next week. But I
mhm.
really feel bad for yours. He's been injured every single year he started. He's never played a full season healthy. So I would like to see him back. But you look at this game this past weekend, and you couldn't even tell he wasn't there. I mean, Manning really showed out.
He's a Manning. We'll just start there. He's
He
got to
was
show.
a Manning, period.
He's just a Manning. Like that's just like a birthright here. Um,
Yeah.
I do think, like you said, we couldn't really tell if he was there or not, viewers. So I think having Manning as a second string right now, Texas' future is very bright with Manning on their team, and I hope that they do everything to keep him. I think, with Manning on their side, the future is going to be very, very bright for Texas. And I'm looking forward to being a part of that future as a Longhorn.
Absolutely. I mean, the sky's blue. A Manning's good at football. What more can you need?
Let's just be honest. Texas has the best tailgates. They have the best parties. They have the best team. Come on.
So you're saying absolutely they should have been in the SEC from the beginning.
I 1000% think that they have always belonged in the SEC. I think they paid their dues and now they're here.
I'm really excited. I think they have the caliber of an SEC team. After this week's performance, OU Tennessee, I'm wondering about OU, but they're taking baby steps. It's a hard adjustment once you join, but Texas has taken it beautifully. They've pulled out a great win against Michigan. They have a crazy season left to go. Speaking of which, the Red River rivalry. How do you feel about that being in the SEC?
I think it deserves a spot. It deserves a primetime spot on everybody's television at home for sure. I think it definitely deserved a spot in the SEC. These both of these teams have worked really, really hard. Um, forever. And I think, like I said earlier with Texas, I think OU has also paid their dues. And as much as I am not a Boomer Sooner, I do say they do belong in the SEC and they do have a spot here. And I think that they've fought really hard for it. I'm very interested to see how this game goes in the SEC because I don't think the SEC is ready for quite this big of a rivalry. This is a huge rivalry. So I'm excited to see how the SEC reacts really to the Red rivalry game.
I mean, I absolutely adored having game day in Norman, Oklahoma, and you would hear them "Oh, you," and then they would shout, and then Texas sucks and everything like that. I thought it was so fun. They definitely have the energy for it. Texas, the exact same way, has that energy with all their horns up and everything like that. They also have a McConaughey, which never hurts. But I think both these teams definitely have the tradition. They definitely have the energy, and they have the strength behind their football teams.
We have more than just Matthew McConaughey. We've got, Glennie Powell's looking good over here as a Longhorn. So I'm excited to see if he shows up to the Red rivalry games. We'll see.
I'm definitely excited for it.
Especially for a big rivalry game like this, how are you going to be tailgating if this was your team, Emma?
Well, my favorite tailgate has always been the homecoming week tailgate. We get there really early, set up, lay out the food. But when I was in school, when we did that tailgate, they would have clubs also having their own booths, and they had one with the science department, and they would get to bring out all the snakes, and you would get to hold them. And so I had a picture every single year of me holding that big boa constrictor, which is a lot of fun. To top it all off, I was a musical theater major, and so every year during that homecoming game, we did get to perform a song from whatever the musical was that year. So it was a lot of fun. But classic tailgate. You always got to play cornhole. You always got to eat the food, the chips and dip. You got hot dogs, hamburgers. Being in a musical theater department and theater fraternity, even we had a bunch of line dances that we would do. It was a whole lot of fun. You sing your team songs. You get really hyped for the game. And then you go in about an hour early to secure your seat in the student section. Hope it's
Did
not too hot.
did the boa ever actually get you, or you just was it very friendly?
It was very, very friendly. I don't know if it was a she or a he, but it would just sit nicely on my arms while I smiled. And then I would promptly give it back. But I love snakes. So it was always really, really fun. I would always circle that one and be like, this day I pick up that boa.
I feel like that is the most like Alabama tailgate experience you could probably have is holding.
Absolutely. And also you have the band right in the middle of the quad and everything coming down playing, getting everyone hyped. Also with the homecoming game the night before, you always had a big bonfire, which was so much fun to go to. But that's just how we do it in the SEC. It's just a blast.
Yeah, a few years ago, I actually, funny enough, accidentally ended up at like a tailgate for the Red Rivalry game in Dallas.
Cool.
We were visiting. My mom and I were big. I mean, obviously, we're huge Longhorn fans, and we've unfortunately never been able to tailgate with other Longhorn fans. But it's really interesting because we did get to stay at a hotel, and it was funny because all of the hotels were completely booked in Dallas. We were like, "What is going on?" Every single person in our hotel was either obviously in OU gear or burnt orange. And we were like, oh, it's the red viral game of the year. And so we got so excited. And outside, nobody could get a Lyft or an Uber. It was so crazy. Everybody was trying to get to the game. We were actually trying to get to a family member's house. And we almost had to like ask these guys for a ride. However, they were outside the hotel parking lot with their grill going. They had margaritas. They were living large in this hotel parking lot, tailgating it up, just enjoying right before they were all going to get into a Sprinter van and head to the game together. So I just want to say the energy around a big rivalry game tailgate is next level to any other tailgate I've ever attended in my life.
No, absolutely. And you got to play your beer pong. You got to play your flip cup. You got to get buzzed and in the mood to go support your team, scream the whole time, get the energy up. So it's just a blast. And I know you mentioned burnt orange. I will say, speaking of orange, I think Texas has the best orange by far because I don't think anybody looks good in Tennessee orange at all. My partner went to Clemson. I wore some Clemson orange this week at his game, and I was like, this is just not a color that is suited to humans. I'm like, we
Like,
look like traffic cones.
yeah, 98% of people don't look good in like bright orange, which is, I mean,
No.
is also pretty bright. I will say it's fun seeing the burnt orange around, and also just my hookem. It's my favorite. It is really disappointing whenever I'm wearing my UT shirt, especially here around Los Angeles, and I'll just have like strangers like horns down. What
It's
is
pretty universal.
Yeah, it's like this huge like everybody hates Texas, and I still am trying to
Yeah.
figure out what the big deal is, and I don't know what we did to piss everybody off, but here we
Well,
are.
they're in the category of teams everybody hates. So you have Texas, you have Michigan because they've won the most games overall. You have Bama because they've won the most national championships overall. Now you have Georgia, and I honestly don't think it's because they win so much, more so that they bark at people all the time. But you're always going to have these teams that it's just like everybody loves to hate. And yes, Texas happens to be one of them, but at least they look the best in orange.
Yes, I will say. I have a question for you. Do you have like a tailgate or just a fan ick? Like, is there something a fan of a team has ever done that you're just like, I hate when people do that. It is so gross and just immediately turn off.
Yeah, well, So in the SEC, some teams have, or some stadiums have started offering beer, which I'm all for. It supports the school and whatnot. But after they've finished their cans and maybe something bad happens in the game, they'll just chuck it. And I'm like, maybe let's not throw our beer cans down the stands. It's more of a safety thing, and it's also kind of like, guys, let's not do this.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely think, especially with the tailgate, is when somebody doesn't like contribute to the tailgate. Like
That's
when
a
they,
big.
yeah, like it's just a human decency thing for me. It's like show up and bring, I don't care, bring beer or cheese for my burgers or something. I don't know, just like help out. And I think it's such a community thing to tailgate and to have fun and go to the games together. And so I think everybody should be pitching in and having fun.
I think when you go anywhere, you bring something. I just think it's a common courtesy, but most definitely a tailgate. And I think the thing that most people forget to bring is ice. So if you're ever in need of something, one, cheap, and two, just last minute to bring, go to a gas station and pick up some ice. Everybody needs more ice.
Very easy. Right. That's like the best thing to bring, I think. But I am really excited. I'm unfortunately not tailgating this year, but I'm going
No.
to maybe